this is what it's like preparing for hell. You get to a certain point of heat and you just figure, well, hell will be a breeze. Plus, I'll get to see all my friends that'll be there too. How's it going, everybody? I'm sitting here sipping this delicious iced coffee my wife made for me. Counting my blessings before I do melt away. As I did make a video about this the other day, you might be thinking, why are you talking about the heat again? When it's hot out, that's all that's on your mind. I got up this morning, it was like 80. Just continuously climbed. It's not even noon yet, and it's like 95, and the real feel says 106. Now, for those who aren't aware, I've mentioned this before, the Northwest isn't used to this, but this is, they say, definitely the hottest. Yesterday was the hottest day on Oregon record since we started taking record. You know, it's crazy how 107 or 108 degrees feels here, but then today and tomorrow we're supposed to be 113, and people are just like, and whenever something like this happens, when a heat wave comes or a cold spell, it's like the first thing I think about are the homeless, the less fortunate, the elderly, the debilitated, the disabled. And you know, it's time when people come together. You see people helping one another, opening cooling centers or closing down the business to make sure everybody's safe, because you may have air conditioning in your car, but if you've ever had your car break down on the side of the road during a really hot stretch of highway, it sucks. I mean, all of a sudden there you are, and you don't have AC instantly, and you get very quickly overheated. Be safe out there. If anybody is enduring this same heat wave, it's just a continuous all the way across the West. This Western drought they're calling the mega drought is, they say, they can look at tree rings to see which years were moist or dry. And this is, since the medieval times, the biggest drought we've had in the West. And it's bad. It's really bad. It still amazes me that people are closing their eyes. This joke comes up about taking the red pill or the blue pill, and I joked about taking the green pill instead. My son said, I was just thinking that last night. It was just funny. It was a coincidence like 5 minutes ago. It's like people better start checking themselves. The age-old argument about climate change isn't an argument. It changes, no matter what. But we are definitely making it worse, not only by burning fossil fuels, but by bigger implications, the way that we utilize our water, the way that we pump the resources out of the rivers and don't replenish them, the way that we don't manage for small-scale farming to allow everyone to be able to have localized food. We use these giant, mega companies that produce monoculture, and so here we are. We're in an interesting time. Are we at the very peak of civilization? I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that that's necessarily has to do with this particular heat wave here. For all I know, the Northwest could be cold later again. But the point being that we're seeing major changes all around us. A lot of people talk about food shortages and potential issues with the systems we have in place, logistics issues. People don't realize something as simple as, for example, you have to can tomatoes within 72 hours of picking them. There's a shortage on supplies to make the sheet metal in China that's shipped over here to be used in cans or made into cans. Something as simple as that can put a crimp in the whole line. If you can't make cans, you can't make cans. And it's just one small part, and you start to see these things unravel. As the climate is becoming more chaotic, that just throws another wrench in the issues that we have, and then they magnify themselves. And eventually, over a period of time, we find ourselves short on supplies, we find ourselves short on energy, and we're unable to keep up with the demand. And this is exactly what's happening in the West. They are still building huge subdivisions with swimming pools, water parks in places like Utah, draining off of the Colorado because water is a right. The thing is, yeah, water's a right, food's a right, but these things also have to be shared. They're resources that are shared among us. And so many of them are improperly managed. Now, I can see a future where we do better. Have desalination plants. Those are majorly cost. They're cost prohibitive, and they're also very expensive and complicated process that ends with a whole bunch of salt that has to be dumped back into the ocean, and it makes toxic dead areas. We need to just start managing what we have better than we do. Now, I've said I believe the Pacific Northwest was immune to these things, and I was wrong. We can have the same problems as anywhere else. We did have a volcano blow up in 1980. I actually remember that when the ash was all over my backyard. I could imagine people in the area, it must have just seemed like an apocalypse, but those things pass quickly. I don't worry about volcanoes. This is the thing, though. A lot of people worry about these things that they've already seen rather than the unseen. And what's coming down the pike is the unseen. You know, I sent a video to a good friend of mine this morning about the potential for food shortages, and he kind of got upset because he's stressed. It stresses him out, and we were talking a little bit, and I was saying, it's not necessarily to say look at what's happening, but rather because I want my friends and family to be prepared for anything that might happen, mentally more than physically. I've said this to somebody else, but you can have all the ammo you want and firearms, but if you don't know how to fix a bolt or a pin or fix your own firearm or make your own bullets perhaps, then you might end up getting screwed over. Knowing basic knowledge about your tools, it's the same thing as storing a bunch of beans and rice but never have cooked beans and rice because you've eaten McDonald's your whole life and you're stuck not knowing how to cook, no books, no understanding when the lights go out. These are extreme cases. My whole life I've believed that I'm going to live through the peak of our current civilization, as far as things were probably best around the late 90s, mid to late 90s. As far as economics, stability, people getting along, crime on the decline, everything was really looking up. And there was a big hiccup with the internet, but it wasn't just the internet. It was that it made people more aware of what was really going on around the world and just how bad we've screwed ourselves over by the way we've managed our own environments. Because we can't deny that, clear cutting was not the best option. Let me give you an example. We learn as we go. Back in the day, people didn't know about nurse trees. Now, the largest trees in the forest are often nurse trees. These nurse trees have longer communications with the other trees. And yes, trees do communicate via pathways of what people think of mushrooms. You realize the mycelium is really the actual organism, and the fruiting body is the mushroom. That's how it reproduces, by releasing spores. But a majority of mushrooms are underground. In fact, under 1 footstep, there's something like 30 miles of filaments in any given patch of forest. They go everywhere, and they communicate with the trees. So they allow trees to share nutrients with them and share sugars, and meanwhile they can convey information across forests about what's going on. If there's a pest, these trees can literally tell the other trees, okay, you need to protect yourself by producing more sap. I mean, this is a well-known phenomenon, and a lot of people don't realize this happens, but yes, trees do communicate. And through scents, like in the air as well, of course, terpenes. But there's the nurse trees. When we first started logging, we started cutting down the biggest trees in the forest because our minds, our petty little minds, told us that, well, let's take the biggest ones and then we can leave a bunch of the small ones, and they must be the oldest, and which makes sense, you would think. I mean, it makes sense then, but now you learn that these nurse trees are actually the ones that help protect the rest of the trees. You've basically broken the mother line between a lot of these trees. And they're starting to leave nurse trees, and they're understanding these things. Same thing, a better example would be the fires down in California. Not current fires, but when the sequoias burned, like 10% or something. There was huge fires, I think, back in the day. The 1900s, early 1900s maybe. I don't recall the exact decade, but major fires took out huge chunks of the forest, and they had been trying to prevent fires down there, naturally, as best we could for a long time. After the forest burned, all these new seedlings started sprouting from the redwoods. And lo and behold, we found out that the seeds actually require high temperature to break open the seed and allow it to fertilize and burn, or to start growing. So the forest, in order to regrow, has to burn. We've learned since that fire management is extremely important. And I know some people still believe you can rake the forest. The fact is, you just need to burn it. You need to let sections burn on their own, and we've screwed that one up so bad that now we're stuck with bigger fires too. And I'm not trying to be any bearer of bad tidings, but rather the most important thing you can do during times of crisis is just be aware and enjoy your life as best you can. I don't worry about an instant apocalypse. I just see a slow decline. And that slow decline could be exacerbated and definitely sped up by human activities or the way we decide to live our lives or some circumstance that we can't foresee. Like one volcano could erupt and give us a winter for a couple of years, what they call a volcanic winter. It's happened many times in the past. We've been so lucky. We have lived in a little window of perfect temperatures and weather for like the last 10,000 years. And in that time, we've built amazing things. And we've had our shot, you know. Not a lot, I don't think, would change with human civilization, honestly. For example, if we had never found fossil fuels and never burned any, this would probably still be happening. Even the slightest warmth can magnify, and once the methane starts, once the methane is released from the permafrost, everything just will speed up. And it's an interesting time to be alive. I don't look at it as doom and gloom. I've known these things are happening since I was a kid. I've expected that I would sit here in 113-degree weather at one point in my life. But there was a time 10 years ago where I saw that, on a thing that was like Death Valley, and it was showing the temperature. I was like, wow, I can't even imagine that. But sitting here just baking out there and knowing it's going to get 20 degrees hotter today, whew, that's a crazy one. Anyway, thanks for listening. Just wanted to ramble about the weather and climate change. Let me know what you think down below. Thanks to all my subscribers, and I will talk to you all later. I don't know if I'll even have the energy to make any more videos. I'm sitting here and I'm just feeling it start to bake as I'm talking. It's connected to my other room, the only one with the air conditioner. Anyway, talk to you all later.